Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Beyond Max Q. I'm your host, Mollie Jahner. I am excited to have Gary with me today from Upstart Ventures Consulting. I think it's all those things in one. Honestly, I've known Gary for a really long time. I met him when I first started marketing. I think it was my first job out of school, and Gary was in charge of all the communities. He was like this huge, high profile customer. And I remember just being so excited to work with you because you were kind, even though you were like the CEO, and you didn't have to be kind to like an infant marketer. And I remember that. And even now, like, reaching back out to you in my network, hey, you want to be on a podcast? And you were so gracious. And so I'm excited to interview you today and have you share, honestly, all of that awesome knowledge and wisdom of years of building startups, exiting from startups, helping startups scale. I think you're going to have a lot of really cool things to share with the team. So please, with that, take it away. Interview.
Ah, okay. Thanks, Molly. Yeah, when you reached out, it's just like, okay, I remember Molly's name and went into my email and found emails back in 2013 where we were communicating. And that's right when we had started Cloud Elements, which is one of the first API integration platforms. And it was about 6, 7 years later, we were acquired by UiPath. And that was a very exciting journey.
Yes. Well, I think I would love to hear about what you're doing right now. Can you talk about like your company now? And then I want to dive into your history because I think there's so much there to unpack.
Yeah. So I built a go-to-market sales consulting company called Upstart Ventures about 2 years ago. And what I do is it's really a passion I have of helping early stage startups figure out their, who they should be selling to, who their ideal customer profile is, and product market fit. So many of the startups that I've mentored over the years, which has been hundreds, they all have the same problem starting off is they come up with a great idea. Many of them have an engineering background, and they build this solution, SaaS solution, in a vacuum. And they think the world is going to beat a path to their door, and so they continue to build, 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 and they don't get any customers. And it's like, how do we go out and scale and find customers? So what I do is help the founders in a founder-led sales process, teach them how to do the sales or what the sales motion is like, and then help them find some initial customers that they can hang their hat on and get some references, and then have some momentum to show to go out and get funding. So,
Well, and you've kind of built up to that, throughout your career, right? So how many different startups have you exited? I feel like at least three.
yeah, yeah, I've exited three. I've probably
Yeah.
crashed and burned 10. So I guess the percentages are, sort of in line with like what VCs, invest in. They know out of 10 investments, they may have one or two that make it across the goal line. So it's been a great journey, and just love working with startups. And I work with a lot of younger founders, and they, are very talented or skilled or really talented engineers, but they just haven't built a company before.
Mhm.
So it's just like, hey, I've seen and made every mistake in the book. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. I've seen headwinds and tailwinds as far as the economy and recessions,
Mhm.
boom times, and so it's fun to leverage my experience so they don't waste a lot of money and make the same mistakes that I've seen.
Well, okay, I love that. I love that you said you've exited three, which to be honest is incredibly successful. I think you're downplaying that a lot. I think like even getting one is kind of an incredible experience to be able to be a part of. But I would like to dig into the 10 failures. I like to hear about, what didn't work. And if you're talking to our audience, which is mostly founders now, young founders, what would you say to them?
The biggest mistake I see is the founders are trying to solve all the world's problems within whatever the technology that they're building. They're really building a Swiss Army knife, and where they need to be building a switchblade and, just going out and targeting and solving one problem and solving that problem better than anyone in the world. So, it's working with the founders on getting, sort of very narrow focus and just going down a very narrow path after you figure out who you should be selling to and who will buy your product. So many founders in the early days, they raise a little bit of money and then they get confident and they spend it in areas that they probably shouldn't be spending it on. And it's better for founders to be as scrappy as possible. And the less amount of money they have drives creativity. So as you raise money, it sort of makes you dumb. It makes you make bad mistakes, is what I've seen.
Mhm. Well, what's one of the areas that you think is a bad place to spend money?
Marketing, which is sort of
Oh,
uh,
to my marketer's heart. Oh, no, but I actually agree with you. I think that that's very true. We've talked about this. I agree with you.
yeah, it's spending marketing in the wrong places, and it's spending marketing before you know who your customers are, and focusing on those customers. So, sort of the spray and pray as far as marketing, and it's you need to really tighten the message. And once you have the message tightened, and it's aligned with a sales focus, one plus one equals six. So that's an area that I've seen, exhibiting at trade shows,
Mm.
that's very, very expensive as compared to just buying a pass or a startup pass or an expo pass and going and walking around and going to the receptions and parties and meeting potential customers, meeting potential partners. And then, when you get, large, have lots of marketing money, then you can really step on the gas to really get the name out. But in the early days, you just have to be very focused on where you spend every dime.
Well, I remember you saying something about how you can kind of almost like hack events,
Yeah.
and and can you talk a little bit about that? Because I thought that was really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So at Cloud Elements, I pioneered this concept called Hackathon. So I've been to hundreds of tech conferences. I've trained many, many reps on how to leverage conferences. And most of the startups that I've founded, we've sold to other tech companies. So we've been a software to software companies. And we would show up at the event, we'd buy an expo pass, and we would walk around and talk to every vendor, talk to all the sponsors, go to all the keynotes, go to all the sessions, all the panels. And it's basically like shooting fish in a barrel because you have this captive audience. So instead of standing in a booth waiting for people to go by and try to, pull them in and rope them in and give them a t-shirt or something, you're going to their booths, you're going to their sessions and you're pitching. So no one sells the sellers, which I found going to so many conferences, and it's just a great way to do lead gen. And then you can tie that in with marketing. You can do, social media. You can have, some private dinners like at the Cap Grill and invite potential prospects and just really being proactive and being different. And so that's how we've scaled every one of the companies that I've built and sold.
I think that's so great. I love that. Like I said, I don't take it personally because I actually agree with you. I think I see a lot of folks who go right out of the gate and they're doing all this expensive stuff, especially advertising, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's just money right down the drain. If you don't know who you're talking to and what message actually resonates with them, that's a big waste. And I also think to your point, like marketing and sales need to be in lockstep.
Yes.
And if they're not, then that's a huge red flag right there because you're just dumping money and there's no actual revenue coming in. So no, I'm with you on that. I think that's really interesting. So no
Yeah,
offense.
the other thing that we did at conferences, I would take our engineers to the conference and they would ride along with me.
Hmm.
And they would meet with, 10, 20, 30 potential prospects and they learned how to do the sales pitch. And they're building the product back at the ranch, right?
Right?
And they very seldom engineers have the chance to meet customers or potential prospects.
Hmm.
So once they meet with potential customers, and we would sell to engineering leaders. So they would have a great discussion about tech stuff that I had no idea really what it was about. I would just kick open the door. And
Mhm.
then that made them better engineers because then they would go back to the HQ and say, hey, we were building the wrong stuff, and now we need to focus on building this. So the light bulb would go off, and then we would get more traction and market adoption because we're building exactly what customers want.
Yeah. And you're letting the engineers out of the basement, essentially.
That's exactly
You can
right.
come out and get some fresh air.
That's exactly right.
I love that. No, that's really good. And I know you talk a lot about building community too, which I think I would love for you to talk about as a founder. Like, where would you focus, and how does that? What does that look like? How do you actually leverage your Rolodex? Or if you don't have a big one, how do you start to build one?
Well, I'm really old school. I like to do face-to-face meetings and, breakfast, lunches, coffees, dinners. Pretty much coffees because everyone loves to drink coffee and they can do that on the way into work if they're back to the office. But you really get to know someone. At the end of the day, friends like to do business with friends. People don't like to buy, or people don't like to be sold, and they don't like to be sold from someone whose job is just to sell. So by creating relationships, and I'm talking long-term relationships. I mean, look how long, we've known each other, even though we haven't stayed in touch. And just out of the blue, it's like, Gary, I want to interview you on this podcast. And, I've made some intros to you and you've made some intros to me since we've reconnected. So it's all about knowing people and building a strong friendship group. And,
Yeah.
I've had many very successful exited founders and investors that have taken the time to pay it forward with me. And that's something that I always try to do. Any founder that reaches out, say, hey, Gary, someone suggested I should talk with you. Could we, just have a quick talk? Could you give me some ideas? And typically, I can open a door for anyone, anywhere, if it's the right type of ask. And, I've been very blessed that people have done the same for me.
I love that. That's really good. That's a really good answer. I think I could probably interview you for a really long time, and you'd be able to tell so many
Uh,
different things to the community. I do want to kind of focus on you're building your business, and in your mind, what was the reason why you had successes, and what happened in those failures?
the reason for successes was just putting myself out there, showing up, and you never know until you say hello. And it's always the at bats that you take where, you're going to fail. In baseball, you fail the majority of the times that you step up to bat, but you have to do that to get base hits and home runs. And, I always kick myself, at the, chances of bat I didn't take. Just like, wow, if I would have just gone up and talked with that person, how would things have been different? But on the plus side, I look at the people that I did go up and talk with, and that's how we eventually were acquired by Cloud Elements. I was at a banking conference in Vail that my CEO sent me, and I was at lunch, and this chief product officer of UiPath spoke, and I was totally mesmerized with what they were building and thought, wow, they could use our integration platform. I went up and talked to him, pitched him on what we're doing. He said, wow, this would be great. And 6 months later, they were a customer. And a year and a half later, they bought us, all because I went up after a luncheon and just introduced myself.
That's
So
amazing.
it was all about relationships.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, and then like you said, the ones that didn't go well, right? Like maybe didn't put yourself out there, or
Yeah, yeah. And when I've been in a social event, um, I love to coach up young sales reps, BDRs, even founders. And we'll be at a social event, and it's just like, hey, let's go over and talk to this person. And if it's a junior founder, it's just like, oh, Gary, I really don't feel comfortable, and then I'll teach them how to do the pitch and how to pitch their own company. And then we'll do that a couple of times. And I say, okay, now it's your turn to do it. And so they'll go and, they may flounder at the first pitch or two or three, but then they get it. And then they set the hook and find someone on their own. It's just like, Gary, I'm so excited about the company that I'm building or that we're building. And thanks for coaching me and teaching me how to do that. So you'd be surprised at how many founders just don't have the elevator pitch down right. And if you don't know how to pitch your baby, no one's gonna, hug it or, cuddle it and, help it grow up.
That's a good way to put it. Um, okay, well, I feel like again I could ask you so many questions, so many different directions. But as we narrow in on time, because we do keep these short, I would love to just open it up to you. Is there anything that you would like to say to people who are founding a business, maybe for the first time, maybe it's their second time, maybe they've had failure, and ways that you think might help?
It's not easy. Commend and, applaud any founder that takes the chance. Is your first startup going to be successful? The odds say no, but still keep at it. Some of the most successful founders have had a couple failures under their belt, and they realize, okay, I made this mistake, and it's like practice bats. So, chances are your first one will be a learning experience, but keep at it. Keep at it if you can. The best way to start a company is not quit your day job, but use your day job to fund your side hustle. And, what was it? The founder of Nike, Phil Knight, his wife wouldn't let him join his own company until they could essentially the company could pay his salary, and he had 50 employees building Nike, and his wife wouldn't let him quit his day job being a CPA. So it's just like, okay, honey, I'm doing the books now, we could afford you, and he jumped in. So, and the rest is history.
I actually didn't know that story. I probably should. I love that. The CPA piece and the reason that his wife didn't let him join. That's pretty great. That's good advice though. I mean, I think that's, a lot of founders, we've been sold this dream that, starting a business and then all of a sudden you're going to be this, gajillionaire. And it's actually not true. And I think there's also, when you think about all the different ways that you can fund it, bootstrapping is the toughest, but I think, you've made this point previously is it's like, it's also could be the most lucrative once you get through the lean years.
Yeah, and I know you asked what my favorite book is, and that actually came out of my favorite book called Shoe Dog, Shoe Dog, and it's about Phil Knight's travels,
Okay.
building Nike starting in 1958, and I believe he got out of the military. He went to Stanford, like a lot of founders do, and had this business plan to, build track shoes, using Japanese manufacturing. And back then, Japanese manufacturing was considered like made in Japan that's cheap. And he failed the business plan that he did for his marketing class.
What?
And the professor said, "Yeah, this is crazy. No one's going to build Japanese shoes." And look at what's happened today.
Fail in the marketing class. That's again, it's about the marketing. The marketers are not getting it together apparently in the story of this podcast. I like it. Well, that was good. That's going to be the question, right? So, like, what are you currently reading? So that's something one of your favorites, but I would like to know what you're currently reading. Are you rereading
Uh,
your doc?
uh, an old book I dusted off the shelf, called, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff,
Oh yes,
because it's mostly all small stuff. And if you look at the things that, most people just tend to worry about in life, it never, happens or come true. So don't worry about the small stuff, and that's very applicable in business and in startups, running out of cash, running out of runway, that's the big stuff. But the
right.
small little stuff, someone that won't take your call, someone that won't, respond to your text. I have someone that is a friend at a major real estate company that I've been working on getting one of my clients in. And I texted him and he said, yeah, send me an email. I sent him an email. He didn't respond. I sent another email. He didn't respond. I sent him a text. He didn't respond. I sent him another one today. And he says, Gary, I'm so sorry. My dad's been in the hospital.
Mhm.
He's very ill, and I've been meaning to respond to you. And let's connect. Here in the next couple of weeks. So just because you don't hear from someone back doesn't mean that they're not interested. But I didn't worry about it. I knew something was going on, and I was actually hoping he was okay.
Yeah.
But that could be a big potential win for us. So that's just an example. You just let it go. You take your chances at bat, and you just take everything in stride. And you got to be crazy to be a founder and to do startups. And you got to realize there's going to be a lot of failures along the way.
hmm I think you're probably one of the most relaxed salespeople I've ever met, to be honest. I think that it's probably like there's tiers. There's like, the BDRs who are hitting the phones and like it's a certain level of like anxiety, and then like once you graduate to the level that you're at where you're like, I've seen and done it all, you're just like, it's all good. Like there's this whole like chill vibe going on, which I really
Oh,
appreciate.
oh. Well, I'm like a duck, underneath the desk at home.
Okay, okay, there we go, there we go. All right, well, for those that want to connect with you, or look at maybe even taking advantage of some of the things that you do for work, what would that look like?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. Say that you heard this great podcast that Mollie's doing, and reach out. And happy to chat and talk with anyone and mentor and give advice. Or it's amazing the companies that I've mentored in the past and how they became successful. And I can actually say, hey, I helped them when they that
Yes.
when they were just starting out, and so proud to see what they've evolved. And then they sell their company and then they do it again, and some of that team breaks off and they're doing other companies. So it's just like having a family, and the kiddos just spread across the world.
I love that. That's an amazing way to end. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, everyone, I'll link everything in the description. You can reach out to Gary, Upstart Ventures. And we just thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom.
Thanks, Molly, really appreciate it.